All right. Hi, everybody. How are we doing? All right. Solid 4:30 response. I appreciate that. There is coffee if anyone needs any. All that being said, my name is Daniel Kleinman. I'm the founder and CEO of Seaworthy Collective. We're a local startup community and venture studio for regenerative ocean and climate impact solutions. And I'm thrilled to be here today with Billy Thalheimer from Regen and Sampriti Bhattacharyya from Navier Boats. And I'll let you guys just introduce yourselves and mention a little bit more about what you're doing, because they haven't heard enough from you, Billy. Go for it.
Hey everyone, I'm Billy Thalheimer, co-founder and CEO of Regen. We build sea gliders, which are all-electric flying boats for regional transportation. We have a sea glider prototype out by the front door in the stage. Please come by and check it out. And that vehicle's in the water now being tested. So exciting progress on our end.
Sampriti?
Hi everyone, I'm Sampriti. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Navier. And we build electric hydrofoiling crafts that are 90% more efficient than traditional boats. And our big vision is to enable a whole new kind of waterborne transportation for congested coastal cities.
Thank you both. Honestly, this is first off a really important moment for CoMotion and honestly for Miami, because blue tech is finally having its moment, as we like to say, and climate tech as a whole, where we're finally getting a stage to talk about the work we're doing and more importantly show how it can actually impact our local community. So just really thrilled about that for starters. But I'm going to jump in with a couple questions. We're going to jump around between not only the technology you guys are working on, but the impact and the overall impact for the ecosystem that we're building here. So my first question, we'll start with you, Billy, is what does coastal transportation look like today, and what are some of the challenges associated with it?
It's really slow. Boats are really slow. They're big, and you can transport cars, and you can hop on them, but no one is taking this on really regional transportation. We look in Europe, where ferry rides are 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, overnight voyages. That's sort of the state of the art right now, and the fuel emissions are the dirtiest fuel of any vehicle ever. And so that's really what we're trying to change. Think about what does mobility look like in the future. It's use of new technologies, more efficient technologies like hydrofoils. It's use of electric propulsion systems, hydrogen propulsion systems. It's increases in speed, whether on the water or flying just over it, so that we have cleaner, faster transportation on the water.
And I think, not throwing any shade at boats, but at the same time, boats definitely need all of the innovation and radical change to be cleaner and faster. So I'd love to hear what kind of obstacles you guys are working to fix at Navier.
Well, the biggest problem, when you really look at it, right? People used to move on boats, and that used to be a way of transportation. But at the advent of the automobiles, we shifted from boats to cars. And the reason you don't see, let's say, water taxis in the city is very simple. Boats are really expensive. Like a 5-passenger boat is 15 times more expensive to drive than a 5-passenger car. So if you can build watercrafts that can compete in cost, speed, and convenience to land-borne option, that's only when you can open up a whole new mode of transportation network, like water taxi, point-to-point, intra-city, within the city. That was never possible before, right? And and then you combine with something like a sea glider. Now you're pushing it beyond the intra-city to regional. Now you can build a whole transportation network just basically based on water.
I love this networked approach. I really think it's important as we're thinking, honestly, just the holistic solutions that we're building, whether it's for climate or for travel, that we need to be connected in the capabilities and value that we're creating for our community. So I really love that perspective. So now moving toward the future and really what you guys are working toward now, I'll throw it back to you, Sampriti. How does your work improve on these current solutions, and what are the major opportunities for impact?
Sure. So the first thing is that we are building a boat that is not 10% or 20% cheaper, but 90% cheaper to operate than a traditional gas boat. So it's electric and hydrofoil. As with hydrofoils, essentially you're no more pushing water, you're above the water, so it's very energy efficient. The second point is that it's a small boat. So now, contrary to a ferry, which needs a terminal, now every marina on the waterway becomes a terminal. So suddenly you don't look at the waterway anymore as an obstacle, right? It becomes equivalent to a highway or a railway system, and every marina becomes the stop point, right? So that's the big change. That's how the world will look like when we, bring this to, reality. Now, the big opportunities that we see is few things, right? I mean, in terms of like, addressing congestion in coastal cities, this is massive. Number two is also in terms of decarbonization, right? I think people should be taking, driving personal automobiles. It's really time. I mean, especially when you see Europe, right? People take, public transportation. So I'm not saying take a 300-passenger ferry, but you still can have the convenience, much more personalized 5-passenger ride instead of 1-passenger automobile. And you can take a lot of the cars from this, congested bridges and put them on the waterway. And that reduces your net carbon footprint.
I love to say when it comes to climate change that we're terrestrially biased, right? Looking to land-based solutions to solve climate change, and just even using the waterways, as you're saying, as actual transportation instead of just as tourism or going out locally snorkeling here. It's a real viable point to decarbonization and honestly convenience. And here, out of anywhere, we should be more dependent on waterways than we are.
Absolutely.
So Billy, same question for you. How does your work really work to advance on the current solutions?
Sure. I think we're in looking at the regional mission. We're sort of playing in a slightly different space where we're competing against aviation and terrestrial solutions and maritime solutions. And I think we all have that painful route. To me, it's Boston and New York, but a lot of people have theirs: LA, San Francisco, Miami to Key West. There's a painful route where driving takes too long and flying's too expensive, and you're spending as much time at the airport as you are on the plane, and you can't take a boat because it's going to take you all day. So really what we're doing at Region is trying to bring aircraft speeds at ferry prices through maritime operations with electrification so we completely eliminate emissions.
Wow. I think, first, I was just going to say, being in Miami, it's not even Miami to Key West, it's Miami to anywhere these days. Well, I want to now kind of talk about some of the roadblocks to its implementation, because I think as we talk about these amazing, catalytic technologies for both taking on carbon and, really making the pace of mobility faster, there's obviously some major roadblocks, and I'm sure you've both experienced some similar ones, especially potentially politically. So Billy, I'll throw it back to you. What are some of these roadblocks that you see when it comes to implementing your technologies?
Yeah, I think for maritime, it's interesting because we only interface with the coast in one place. So there's a huge importance of real estate and of docks. And as Sampriti was saying, you're talking about marinas now with limited dock space. When we go to larger vehicles like we're operating, we're competing with ferries and shipping containers on potentially crowded waterways. And so getting use of these facilities to transition over to sea glider water taxi operations is critical. And different municipalities have sort of different rules and interests, and different political groups sort of vying for use of that space. So I think the docks is one thing, and then I think just sort of an education effort is another, whereby communities understand what we're doing. We haven't really had a strong maritime transportation system in a century. So what does this look like, and how does it benefit them, and how do we assuage their concerns around things like noise and pollution, et cetera?
Yeah, great point. Sampriti?
Yeah, I know. I mean, Billy, hit the main points, exactly the same. But I'd add to it, a lot of the people, when I say like, hey, you're going to travel on water, and then the first question is, well, will people take like waterborne transportation? It's like, because it doesn't occur to them, like, they don't think about it, right? The other thing is, of course, one nice thing about hydrofoils is that, on a traditional boat, which I did not mention, it's just not pleasant to travel on a coastal waterways. You don't want to get seasick twice a day. When you go over foils, or I'm sure it's the same with the gliders, right? Like, the travel is smooth, right? There is no seasickness or anything like that. You're just like on a jet plane. But talking about, the blocks, I think for us, launching a water taxi is pretty straightforward. It's just like launching a water taxi operation. But once you're thinking about scale, then of course permits with the cities, those support systems really matter. And of course partnership with marinas, right? All of that comes into play. So there's a lot of like, stakeholders that you really have to work together.
I feel like it's like there's the local scale, then there's like the hyper local scale, and there's the county scale, right? none of this is simple, and that's before we even get to the technology, right? So those are really good points. And I think as we work to shift perspective on this, which is, I think, so much of why it's so important that these conversations even happen here, people need to be aware, and not only aware, but actually see the opportunity for these new modes of transportation and for the water literally being a part of our daily lives. And especially for South Florida with climate change, we don't really have a choice with that, so we should be acting on it. So bringing it now to South Florida and really our ecosystem here, really, for those who don't know, the ocean economy, we call it the blue economy. You guys are really helping to lead so much innovation, specifically in the transportation sector of the blue economy. But as you see the opportunity here in South Florida, my question to you, and I'll start with you, Sampriti, is how do you see South Florida's blue economy evolving, and how might decarbonized marine transport really grow as a sector within it?
I mean, this is a very interesting question, right? Everybody say South Florida or Miami should become Silicon Valley, but I think the nice thing about here is that you should double down on the strengths you have, which is one thing is your waterway. And the second thing is also the big culture of boat building, right? So I personally think that, as we are going to this, as we look at this, next generation of marine transportation, especially for us, I mean, we are building the mobility, but at first we are building boats. We are looking like scouting shipyards out here for our production facility, right? I mean, there's a huge opportunity to build the next generation, more efficient, sustainable, vessels right here in South Florida. It could become the hub, and that would have a huge impact on the economy itself. And then it could set an example both by, both intra-city and regional transport by water. I mean, there's a huge potential for Florida to set that example. You see that so much in Europe. I think U.S. has quite a bit to go, but I think the time is now.
Yeah, I know the county was actually trying to get a carbon cluster together at some point of organizations actually taking on climate change, primarily focused on making buildings and things more efficient. But to me, again, it's how we actually, I guess no pun intended, build the rising tide to lift all boats. I had to make one pun. So, Billy, same question for you.
Yeah, I think Miami is in this pretty unique stance where, sort of recasting itself as the capital of capital and embracing all these new efforts. And Miami has this amazing way of, making things sexy, right? Making things exciting, like Web3, crypto, awesome. Coming to Miami, we'll have a conference about it. We'll build stuff together. And I think maritime historically has been totally left behind in that effort, and it's cool stuff like hydrofoiling boats and flying boats and electric things that go faster than cars and that maybe fly themselves. That's sort of the opportunity here, and so using Miami as sort of that epicenter and that excitement around it to say, the blue economy is not only important and pervasive, but sexy and exciting now.
Well, and I think by definition, when we talk about disruptive technology, right, it's literally a perspective shift, right? It's going from, old grungy shipping boats, and I mean, if you ever go down the Miami River, you'll see boats that are like literally rusted to the point that you're shocked that they are still in use. Like, it's actually kind of abhorrent. But at the same time, it's really this opportunity to say, like, what if we could actually make this, to your point, a sexy industry? And why not? If we could do it with Web3, we could do it with anything. So
I should add to Billy's point that that's exactly why we are, unveiling our sexy Navia 27 in Miami in October, right? I mean, it's a recreational boat, and there is no better place to show off like a cool flying hydrofoiling boat, in the industry. I mean, this is the place to unveil it.
Yeah. Billy, you're already a little step ahead unveiling your prototype today, so that's awesome.
Theirs will be bigger, though. I'll give you credit.
Yeah, well, that's the real deal. All right, so with that being said, the next question I have, Billy, will throw to you is, what stakeholders do you see necessary for building networks of decarbonized transport, and how might we engage them to help build up the larger blue tech ecosystem, from corporates to ESG and maybe even Web3?
Oh, man.
This one's a fun one.
I mean, there's so many stakeholders, right? So for us, at least, we're talking about a new mode of transportation. Like, sea gliders don't exist today, right? So we need to start with the local municipalities. Hey, we want to do this new thing. Like, let's zone and permit to do it. Then we need to go to the real estate holders, the dock operators. We're going to bring this new vehicle into your harbor. Work with the harbor master and the Coast Guard and say, this thing will be foiling very quickly through your harbors. We have systems on board, so it'll be safe. And we'll talk you through that. But you should know about it, and let's work with you to regulate it. And then from there it goes, as you were saying, the community and addressing concerns like, will these things be safe? Will these things hit my boat? Will these things hit maritime fauna? Will they make noise and make my brand new, beach house really a pain to live in? So it's really this sort of across the board engaging all these ecosystems and stakeholder groups. It's going to take all of them because one could take down the whole thing, really.
I'll just say quick anecdote on my part. I actually had I was working in Boston for a marine robotics company, and we had a simulated underwater minefield and an multi-million-dollar underwater robot in a shipping lane. Wasn't the best idea. Not my plan. Anyway, sorry, Sampriti, same question for you.
Yeah, no, in our case, I mean, we are actually planning to start a small operation, like a short route next year. Basically, it looks mostly like a boat, so that it would not attract as much attention as a sea glider, but it's a flying boat still.
It's pretty fly for a boat.
In our case, the work is a lot with, of course, with the cities, like getting the permits and, the working with the marinas. And also the people who can expedite it is basically working with the corporates. Like when you have offices, like let's say you are in East Bay and your employees are in East Bay, you want to provide a transportation for your employees to like South Bay, like Redwood City in San Francisco. Working with corporates would be a great thing for us. That would definitely expedite a lot of this transportation. And definitely, I do think that the future of transportation is multimodal. So working with ride sharing, where it provides really seamless transfer points, that will also lead to greater adaptability for sure.
Yeah, and I think especially when we talk about corporate engagement, what we're seeing especially recently with some legislation that went through is ESG goals, right? And actually being held responsible for their entire company's actual carbon footprints, right? And so I think there's actually something to be said of if you can have your employees actually save on their carbon footprints, that should help your bottom line too.
Actually, I should add one more important stakeholder is actually real estate developers, because once you make waterfront more accessible, right, then more real estate develops there, and that leads to more water taxis, right? I mean, if you think about right now, all the township is developed around highways just because transportation is there. But the reason people don't live on the waterways is because it's just way out of the main transportation channels like the roads. Right?
Oh, great points. So we have time for one more question, and I think we have a little time for Q&A after as well, if anyone has any questions. There's a microphone right there in the middle. But my last question, softball. What advice do you have for aspiring impact-focused entrepreneurs looking to take the leap into coastal transportation, decarbonization, and larger opportunities to reverse climate change? Billy, I'll throw it back to you.
Regent's hiring actively, and we want bright entrepreneurs focused on changing coastal transportation. No, but in addition,
shameless plugs appreciated.
In addition, though, for entrepreneurs looking for their own journey, I think it's sort of developing a very crisp vision of your dream, and then communicating that dream and having deep conviction in how your dream changes the world. And I want an Aviate boat now. I mean, holy crap, those things sound exciting and transformational. And so I think it's that. Like you when you see a founder with a dream, it's infectious.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get intimidated by big problems in the world. But if you break the problem down into where are the bottlenecks, you will find that there is limitless possibilities. So I think my advice to people is mostly that don't get pessimist, or don't get depressed when you see big problems. Just break down where the bottlenecks are, and you'll be surprised that most of you would be pretty capable to address those head on. So
I love to say it's seeing the problems as opportunities instead of existential crises, right?
Yeah.
Where it literally is disruption, right? So.
Yeah.
With all that being said, I really appreciate both of your guys' perspectives. Really, when we talk about defining maritime, you guys are already doing the work, making it sexy. Hell yeah, Miami. But really just appreciate all your thoughts today, and we'll have any questions from you guys. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Silvio.
Hey, Silvio here, Logos Blue Economy Foundation, collaborator with Daniel Seaworthy. Super interesting, love what you're talking about today. Miami born and raised, been focused on impact investing 15 years. A lot of these hard problems have hard solutions, that's hard tech. And I think that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. This hard tech, hardware component, hardware type businesses, hardware type startups have immense challenges that used to be led in the US and have left, but I think would be coming back. So I think you guys are really well positioned for that. Can you talk about some of those challenges and how you've been able to overcome them, and what kind of solutions you would still be more helpful for you to be able to overcome even the larger scaling issues of hard tech and the solutions you're working on? Thanks.
Sure, I can take a swing at that. So hard tech involves prototyping, it involves learning new challenges, and I think from a venture perspective, it means that we're forming relationships with investors that get it. They get the pace of these programs. They get the capital-intensive nature of these programs. If you go to them with too small a number, they'll look at you and shake their head. They'll say, "You're not thinking through this. This will break. You're going to need more. Come back to me with a plan that is failure tolerant and a timeline that actually makes sense." But I think if you can communicate that, and again, sort of crystallize that vision and how it is disruption, then hardware ultimately has much higher upside because you can be so transformational with this and because you can build up higher moats. Software is easier to scale, but potentially also easier to replicate. Hardware, we're building up patents and IP and trade secrets. We're learning, putting things, in our case, on the water. And so we're building up these strong moats, and we can see, one of the fastest growing companies on the planet is Tesla because they have this hardware moat that no one else can touch. And we're seeing it now with companies like Rivian as well who are following them. So that is the upside, and that is the market capture. We're a Peter Thiel-backed company, and 0 to 1, he'll say the companies of the next generation, of the next decade, the biggest ones are going to be the hardware companies. That is what's ripe for disruption. So as long as we're clear and passionate in our vision about how it's transformational, we're forward and honest in terms of what it takes to get there, I think we'll continue to get buy-in with the right investors.
Yeah. I mean, similar sentiments here, right? And I think, both of us being MIT, we have a thing for doing hard tech. We just we just like physical hard things.
I worked at an MIT spin-out, so I'll by proxy.
But the thing is that, the thing is, when you build something that has such a step function disruption, that if you build it, it fundamentally changes how you look at the world. And if, people you're raising funds from, they understand it, they will back you. I'm going to be honest enough, that's not 99% of the investors. The number of investors who back hard tech is actually really small at the end of the day. But if you have a plan and you can logically, at the end, everything boils down to unit economics, right? Like, it has to make sense and it has to make money. And, it cannot be just a cool project. It has to show, like, can this actually scale? I can build a great technology today for $1 billion, but can I actually make it at a production and scale? So, of course, when you're building a hardware company, you have to think through those steps. So there's quite a bit of deep work that needs to be done. But if you can explain them to the right people, I think, nothing is easy. Building a company is not easy, but I think if you're doing the right thing, it can be done.
Any other questions? Go for it. Can I use the microphone over there? Oh, I thought you had a question. No, okay. Yeah. Got you, Mike.
Hi, Michael Penfield. Work with Daniel on his with the foundation and some other things. One point that I think is important, and the young lady here, talk about how we as a community can support closing the gender gap, getting more women founders into this technology, also people of color, engaging the diversity. Can you speak to that? How as a community we can do that, and then the companies corporate-wise as well?
Sure thing. So I'll give you a quick background on my story. So I came from India. I'm not even, I'm an immigrant myself. And I grew up and I went to a community college. And where I grew up, the best that was expected out of me was to work in a front desk, get married. And there was no plan of ever coming to America and getting an internship, starting a company. One in over 500 emails actually got me on a plane ride to America about 14 years ago, and eventually got to grad school at MIT and all of that. I think the best thing that I saw, in terms of how do you really bring more women, I think a lot of it is earlier education, how we are brought up really impacts what we think we are capable of. If we are fundamentally, when we are young, we are told that, hey, the best, your role is this, that impacts a lot. But a lot of education in the school, like, opening up, like what I used to teach, for example, a lot of girls robotics back at MIT. The exposure really, really helps. And I think that it is also important to actually put effort, right? Because the number of women in, let's say, robotics is really small, right? When you're recruiting, it's easy to not pay attention to diversity and just recruit what's easiest. So you have to actually take some effort to go out and find the women who are absolutely phenomenal, doing great work, and inspire them to join you in the journey. So I think there are a few components to that.
And I just want to add, I think representation is intentional. And when we were building this panel, we had a list of 2 men and 2 women we wanted to have on the panel. Unfortunately, the other woman couldn't join us. But it's really about, first off, having the opportunity and the stage to share the work that you're all doing. And so the fact that blue tech is even on here again is a huge stake. But more importantly, that it's not just white men that are doing it, and that it's everyone from any background can do this work. So
I think it's very important to create data points that me being an Indian immigrant doing this, it inspires other young girls in India to think that, hey, even though I did not go to the top school, I still have a chance. So it's all about creating more and more data points to inspire others.
Absolutely. Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciated all your support and participation. And thank you guys again. Really appreciate all the insights.